Life is a river whose course we cannot always see, winding through valleys of silence, over stones of hardship, into oceans vast and uncharted. At times we may feel lost, drifting beyond the shores of certainty, wondering if the currents of grace still know our name. But just as the dawn does not forget the night, so too does God's hand never lose its way toward us. Blessings are not bound by place or season. They do not wait for the perfect moment or the perfect version of you. They move through the seen and unseen, weaving through the quiet spaces of your life, finding you not by chance but by design. Even in your solitude, even in your questions, you are never beyond the reach of divine love. For the same God who sets the stars in motion, who breathes the tides into being, has written your journey into eternity and his blessings. Life can sometimes feel like a collection of scattered moments, a series of events that don't seem to fit together. We walk through days that feel ordinary, through nights that seem endless, through seasons of waiting when nothing makes sense. And in those moments, we wonder, where is God? Does he see me here? Does he remember the dreams I once carried, the prayers I whispered in the stillness? But my friends, let me tell you something. There is an unseen thread running through it all, a thread woven by hands far greater than ours. We may not always see the pattern, we may not always understand the design, but that does not mean it isn't there. God is not absent in the silence. He is not distant in the waiting. His blessings do not work on our schedules, and they are not confined to the moments we think are worthy of his presence. Think of the wind, moving, shaping, stirring the world around us, though we cannot see it with our eyes. Think of the roots beneath the earth, growing, stretching, forming life in unseen places. That is how God works. He is not only in the grand miracles, in the obvious victories. He is in the details, in the quiet workings of grace that we do not yet recognize. And yet, when life feels uncertain, when we cannot see what is ahead, we are so quick to believe that we are alone. We mistake waiting for abandonment. We mistake stillness for being forgotten. But what if I told you that some of God's greatest blessings do not come in the form of immediate answers, but in the unfolding of a greater story? What if I told you that his blessings are not just in the destinations, but in the journey itself? I have seen it time and time again, people walking through seasons of pain, of confusion, of wondering if God has passed them by, and yet years later they look back and realize that even in the moments they thought were empty, God was moving. Even when they felt lost, he was leading. Even when they thought they had taken a wrong turn, he was weaving it into something far greater than they ever imagined. Because the truth is, God's blessings will find you, not because you chased them down, not because you were always looking in the right direction, but because they were never lost to begin with. His purpose for you was written long before you ever took a breath. His love for you was set in motion before you ever knew his name. And nothing, no mistake, no distance, no hardship can erase what he has already ordained. So if you are waiting, if you are searching, if you are wondering when your blessing will come, do not be afraid. You are not forgotten. The thread of your life is being woven into something beautiful, something eternal, something beyond what you can see right now. And when the time is right, when your heart is ready, when the path has been prepared, his blessings will meet you right where you are, because they have never been far from you to begin with. There are moments in life when we find ourselves in the wilderness, times when the road ahead is uncertain, when prayers seem to go unanswered, when the silence feels heavier than the words we long to hear. We all walk through these seasons, and when they come, we ask ourselves, has God forgotten me? Has he led me this far only to leave me now? But my friends, listen to me. Just because you can't see the way forward doesn't mean God isn't leading you. Just because you don't feel his presence doesn't mean he isn't near. The wilderness is not abandonment. The silence is not rejection. Sometimes the most powerful work God does in our lives happens in the places where it seems nothing is happening at all. Think about the story of Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, thrown into prison for a crime he did not commit. Year after year, he sat in a place that seemed far from the dreams God had once placed in his heart. He could have thought, God has left me. My purpose has been forgotten. But what he didn't know in those long years of waiting was that God was positioning him for something greater than he could have ever imagined. And when the time was right, the same Joseph who was left in a prison was lifted to a palace. What seemed like a detour was actually the very road that led to his destiny. And isn't that how God works? We think we've been set aside, but we've actually been set apart. We think we're being delayed, but we're actually being prepared. We think we've been left behind, but God is already ahead, making a way where we cannot see. I want you to hear this today. Just because you are in a difficult place does not mean you are in the wrong place. Some of God's greatest blessings come wrapped in the very struggles we wish we could avoid. Some of his most powerful answers come in the quiet moments when we think he is silent. What if the wilderness is not the place where you are forgotten, but the place where you are formed? What if the silence is not a sign of his absence, but an invitation to draw closer? I know there are some of you right now who are walking through a season of waiting. You've been praying for an answer, for a breakthrough, for a sign that God is still working in your life. And I know how easy it is to grow weary, to wonder if your prayers are just echoes in an empty sky. But let me remind you, God does not waste a single moment. He does not waste a single tear. He does not bring you into the wilderness to abandon you there. If he has allowed you to walk through it, then he has already prepared a way through it. The enemy wants you to believe that you are alone, that you have been forgotten, that your best days are behind you. But that is a lie. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are not beyond the reach of God's blessings. So don't give up in the waiting. Don't lose faith in the wilderness. Don't mistake silence for absence. Because when God is ready, when the time is right, his blessings will meet you right where you are, and you will see that he was never far from you at all. One of the greatest struggles of the human heart is the belief that we must somehow earn the love of God. We look at our mistakes, our failures, the moments we wish we could take back, and we wonder, how could God bless someone like me? How could he still have a plan for my life when I've made so many wrong turns? But hear me today. God's blessings are not reserved for the perfect. His love is not given as a reward for those who have done everything right. If that were the case, not a single one of us would ever receive his grace. We don't qualify for his blessings by being good enough. We receive them because he is good enough. Look at the stories throughout Scripture. Time and time again, God chose the unworthy, the broken, the ones the world had written off. Moses had a past. David made mistakes. Peter denied even knowing Jesus. And yet God's blessings found them. Not because they were perfect, but because they were his. And my friend, you are his too. We have this idea that our failures disqualify us, that if we've strayed too far, we have placed ourselves outside the reach of his goodness. But nothing could be further from the truth. You see, God does not bless us based on what we deserve. He blesses us based on who he is. His love is not conditional. His mercy is not limited. His grace does not come with a checklist of requirements. Think about the prodigal son. He took his inheritance, ran as far as he could, wasted everything he had, and found himself broken, empty, ashamed. But when he finally decided to return home, expecting only judgment, what did he find? His father was already running toward him. His father didn't wait for an explanation, didn't make him prove himself worthy. He embraced him, clothed him, and restored him. As soon as the child had been reborn, he embraced him, clothed him, and restored him, not because the son had done everything right, but because he was still his son. And that's exactly how God sees you. No matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, no matter how many times you've fallen, He is still running toward you. His blessings are still chasing after you, but some of us struggle to receive them. We say, I don't deserve this. I haven't earned it. And you're right, you haven't. None of us have. That's what makes grace so powerful. That's what makes God's love so astounding. It's not about what we have done, it's about what He has done. So stop holding yourself back from the blessings He has already prepared for you. Stop letting shame convince you that you are too far gone. Stop believing the lie that you must first become worthy before you can receive His goodness. Because the truth is, you will never be worthy enough on your own. But you don't have to be. His love has already declared you worthy. So wherever you are right now, whatever burden you carry, whatever regret lingers in your heart, let it go. Because God is not waiting for you to be perfect. He is waiting for you to simply receive. And when you do, you will see His blessings have been waiting for you all along. So often we look for God's blessings in the big moments, the breakthroughs, the open doors, the unmistakable signs. We expect them to come with bright lights and fanfare, clear and undeniable, as if heaven itself should announce their arrival. But what if I told you that some of the greatest blessings of God don't come the way we expect? What if I told you that even when you can't see Him working, He is already moving on your behalf? God is not limited to what is visible. His presence is not confined to what we can understand. He moves in the seen and unseen, in the quiet and the still, in the moments we overlook. But because we do not always recognize His hand, we assume He is absent. Think about Elijah on the mountain, waiting for God to reveal Himself. A mighty wind tore through the rocks, but God was not in the wind. An earthquake shook the ground, but God was not in the earthquake. Because a fire blazed through the mountain, but God was not in the fire. And then after all the noise had faded, Elijah heard a still, small voice. That was God. Not in the spectacle, not in the grandeur, but in the quiet. How many times have we missed God's presence because we were looking in the wrong places? How many times have we expected blessings to arrive wrapped in glory when all along they were unfolding in the simple, ordinary moments of our lives? The breath in your lungs today is a blessing. The roof over your head, the people who care for you, the doors that closed because God was protecting you from something you could not see, all of these are His blessings. But we often miss them because they do not come in the way we expect. I have met people who say, I don't see God working in my life. And I ask them, are you sure? Or are you just looking for Him in the earthquake and missing Him in the whisper? Sometimes the greatest blessings of our lives are hidden in what we don't understand. A delay that keeps us from harm. A disappointment that leads to something greater. A closed door that saves us from walking down the wrong path. We see inconvenience. God sees protection. We see silence. God sees preparation. We see a detour. God sees the perfect route to our destiny. And sometimes the blessings that matter most are the ones shaping us on the inside. Strength that grows in hardship. Peace that deepens in the waiting. Faith that is refined in the struggle. Not all blessings can be touched or seen, but they are no less real. God is moving in ways beyond what you can imagine. He is arranging things in the background, aligning people, shaping circumstances, preparing what is ahead. And one day you will look back and see what you could not see before, that He was there all along, working in the unseen places, leading you in ways you didn't even realize. So don't be discouraged if you don't yet see the blessing. Don't believe the lie that he has forgotten you. His hand is never still, his love is never absent, and his blessings are never far. Even now, they are finding you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. And when the time is right, you'll see. He was working all along. Why? One of the greatest struggles we face is the idea that we have to chase down God's blessings, that we have to strive, to work, to prove ourselves worthy before He will move in our lives. We convince ourselves that if we just pray hard enough, if we just fix every flaw, if we just get everything right, then maybe, just maybe, God will notice us. But the truth is, God's blessings do not depend on our ability to earn them. They are not distant treasures hidden away, waiting for us to track them down. No, my friend, the blessings of God will find you. They will meet you where you are, not because of what you've done, but because of who He is. Look at the stories in Scripture. When God called Moses, Moses wasn't out searching for a divine purpose. He was tending sheep in the wilderness, thinking his best days were behind him. When God chose David, David wasn't in a palace. He was in a field, forgotten by everyone but God. And when Jesus called his disciples, He didn't go looking in the temples for the most qualified scholars. He found fishermen by the sea, tax collectors at their booths, ordinary people in the middle of their everyday lives. What does that tell us? It tells us that God's blessings are not waiting for you in some distant place. They are not reserved for a version of you that has it all figured out. They are already moving toward you, even when you don't realize it. But so often, we worry. We wonder if we've missed our moment, if we've taken the wrong turn, if we've strayed too far, if we are somehow out of range of God's goodness. But let me tell you, there is no place too far, no road too broken, no detour so long that His blessings cannot reach you. Think of Jonah. He ran as far as he could in the opposite direction of God's plan. He ended up in the belly of a great fish in the depths of the sea. But even there, God found him. Even there, God's mercy reached down, lifted him up, and set him back on course. If God's blessings could find Jonah in the depths of the ocean, don't you think they can find you where you are right now? I have met people who say, I feel like I've wasted too much time. I feel like I've missed my opportunity. I feel like I've lost the life I was meant to have. But listen to me. God is not limited by time. He is not bound by your past. He is not confined to the mistakes you have made. He is the God who restores, who redeems, who takes what was lost and brings it back in ways greater than you could ever imagine. And when God decides to bless you, nothing can stop it. No person, no circumstance, no failure of your own can block what He has already prepared for you. His blessings are not fragile. His plans for you do not crumble because you made a wrong turn. The same God who set the stars in place, who calls each one by name, has already written your journey, and what He has spoken over your life will come to pass. So stop striving. Stop wondering if you are too late, if you are too broken, if you have somehow missed your moment. What God has for you will find you. It will meet you in the middle of your ordinary life, in the quiet places of your heart, in the moments when you least expect it. And when it does, you will know His love has been chasing you all along. There are times in life when we wonder if the path we're on is leading anywhere at all. We pray, we seek, we wait, and yet we don't see the answers we expect. We look around at others who seem to be moving forward, who seem to have everything falling into place, and we ask ourselves, what about me? Has God forgotten my story? But hear me today. God's blessings do not operate on our schedules. They do not come according to our timetables or our sense of urgency. They come in His perfect time, in His perfect way. And when they arrive, we will see that they were never late. They were always right on time. Think about Abraham. God made him a promise. A promise so great it seemed impossible, that he would be the father of many nations, that through him generations would be blessed. But year after year passed, and still no child was born. Can you imagine the questions in his heart? Can you imagine the doubt, the moments of wondering if he had misunderstood, if God had changed his mind? But God had not forgotten. He was working in the waiting, and when the time was right, Sarah gave birth to Isaac. Not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. Because God's promises are never abandoned. His blessings are never lost. What he has spoken will come to pass, and nothing in this world can stop it. And yet we struggle with waiting. We want to see results now. We want answers today. But if we could only see what God sees, we would understand. What seems like delay is often preparation. What feels like silence is often God positioning things in ways we cannot yet comprehend. Think about Joseph. He had a dream as a young man that he would one day be in a position of great authority. But before that dream came to pass, he found himself in a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and locked away in prison. Year after year passed, and it must have felt like the dream had died, but the dream had not died. It was being prepared, and when the time was right, when Joseph had been shaped for the blessing, he was lifted from the prison to the palace in a single day. Do you see it? God's timing is not about delay, it's about alignment. It's about making sure that you are ready for the blessing and that the blessing is ready for you. Some of you are in a season of waiting right now. You have prayed, you have believed, and yet you do not see the breakthrough. But don't let discouragement take root. Don't let doubt steal your faith. What God has spoken over your life will not fail. The timing may not be what you imagined, but the promise is sure. So trust him. Trust that he knows what he is doing. Trust that every moment of waiting has a purpose. Trust that when the time is right, the doors will open, the answers will come, and his blessings will find you exactly where you are. And when that moment comes, when you look back and see how every step was leading you to exactly where you needed to be, you will understand God was never late. He was always on time.